The special meeting, the first public budget hearing for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, for the Putnam County School Board is now in session. We'll have a roll call for is that the first?
Yeah, Carol, can you call it, or does Carol call that? You want to just call the roll
Sure.
by district?
Yes, District 1,
Here.
District 2,
Here.
District 3. That's Ms. Gilliard?
Yes.
Who's not present. District 4
Here.
and District 5.
Here.
Okay,
Okay, and now we'll have the superintendent's statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with Section 200.065 and Chapters 1010 and 1011 of the Florida statutes, I am submitting the tentative balanced budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023, and I'm recommending the proposed millage to be levied. On July 21st of 2022, you approved the tentative budget and millage for advertising. The purpose of today's public meeting is to approve the 2022-2023 proposed tentative budget and proposed millage rate, and to set the date, time, and place of the final public hearing on our budget. And Ms. Odom will come and share some information.
Yes, I will. I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pass around some handouts, and I'll briefly go over these. I don't want to take a
Is
lot
your
of your
mic
time
working,
today.
Rhonda?
I'm sorry, I was
Okay, it's
probably
working,
moving
yeah.
around. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, I get one
Yeah, leave one for.
there for Sandy's.
I think we only put that one page out there on board docs because I was still working on all the rest of this stuff. But if you all are ready, I'll go ahead and get started. I've tried on your little on your handouts to put a number down at the bottom, and I'll reference the number when I talk about them. But we are here today to present, discuss, and adopt the tentative millage rates and the tentative budget for this school year 2022-2023. I'm going to briefly go through the documents that I've handed you. The first handout is the rollback rate, and the rollback rate is a millage rate that it would take to bring into the district the same amount of tax revenue that we received last year, excluding the effects of any new construction. From that handout, you'll see on page 1 that our rollback rate is 4.9971 mills. Our 2022-2023 millage rate is 5.463 mills. So this is an increase of 0.465 mills from the rollback rate, as you'll see from page 1, but it's a decrease of 0.317 actual mills from last year's millage rate, which is shown on page 2 of that handout. This entire decrease of actual millage is attributable to the rate set by the legislature in our required local effort. What all this basically means is that the 5.463 mills this year that has been set will bring in 109.3% of the funds generated from last year's 5.780 mills. From page 3 of that handout, you'll note that you can look at different values, but you will note that a property owner whose appraised value remains the same as last year, who has an appraised property value of $100,000, would see a decrease in their taxes owed to the school district of $23.78. Please note that even though we have to advertise that we're having a proposed tax increase, we have actually lowered our millage rate yet again. We've been lowering every year for several years now. But yet again, because the value of the property in Putnam County has increased, this lower millage rate still brings in more tax revenue than it did in the prior year, and thus that's why it's considered a tax increase. These millage rates were set by the state, and we have to levy them in order to receive our FEFP funds of over $60 million. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail here since we do have a couple of members of the public here. We haven't been used to having anybody here, so I will say that each school board that participates in the state allocation of funds through the Florida Education Finance Program, we know it as the FEFP, for the current operation of schools, we must levy the millage that they set for us for local property taxes. The legislature meets, they choose a certain millage rate for each county, and they tell you what you have to levy in order for us to get our proceeds of state funds. And they do this by having a certification of property tax values of each district by the Department of Revenue, and the only way to levy more than the amount that they tell us for operating or capital purposes is to go before the public for a vote. But if you levy less than they tell us that what we have to do, we really lose out on over $60 million worth of state funds that basically funds our school district. So of course we have to always do the required local effort amount. And the property values in Putnam County, as I mentioned at the meeting to advertise, have increased significantly over this time last year. Last year, our property was valued at $5.23 billion. This year, it's valued at $6.18 billion, and that's after pulling out all effects of new construction. So that's really an 18% increase in values of $950 million, basically. So I'm sure most taxpayers will feel an increase in taxes this year because of the increase in their property values, but it won't be because the district increased their millage rate. The next handout that I have for you is a comparison of Putnam County property tax values, millage and revenue handout. It's got number 2 in the bottom of it. And it's just for informational purposes. It shows you analysis of our property tax base, the declining millage rates, but the increase in revenue generated from 2009-10 to the present budget year of 2022-2023. Our property base has increased from $4.2 billion in 2009-2010 to $6.2 billion currently. Our millage rate has declined by 2.031 mills in that same period of time. Back in 2009-10, we were levying 7.813 mills, and now we're only leveling 5.463 mills. A school district is allowed to go up to a maximum of 10 mills. Of course, with a lot of that, you have to go out for a vote of the public to increase it up to that. But, you know, in all my time here and time before that, I've never known us to go over about 7.5 mills. And again, currently we're at 5.463. We are collecting 4% more tax revenue than we did 13 years ago. Though it's a move in the right direction, because you saw in prior columns that we have not been collecting as much every year. But and as far as operating goes, we're still down 1.68 million, but the capital outlays raised locally. There's an increase there, so overall we're seeing an increase of more funds coming in, and it is, like I said, a 4% more tax revenue than 13 years ago. The next handout that I have for you is got a number 3 at the bottom, and it's called Analysis of General Fund Collected Property Taxes. This is, again, just informational. We're required to budget a 96% collection rate for the general fund, and we do so. We've always collected well above the budgeted rate, which over the years usually brought in another $200,000 or so in the general fund. In 2015-16, that's the only year that I know of that we did not collect at least the amount that we had budgeted at the 96%. So we were down $209,000 that year below what had been budgeted. I'm happy to say that that did not continue. I was scared that was going to start a trend that we were going to see, that we weren't getting those collections in. But usually with the tax certificate sale, someone buys most of those, so the district still gets their millage money. So the year that just ended, we actually collected 97.82% of possible collections. So really over $400,000 more than we had budgeted to collect at the 96% rate. I think the next handout is your analysis of capital dollars available for Putnam. It's handout number 4. And again, informational. You'll just see the decline from, you can see the decline from 2007-8 through 2022-2023. In the current budget year, that tax base went up, so we are projecting more capital dollars than in 2007-2008 of close to $1 million. However, we no longer receive the PICO new construction, which was $500,000. We no longer receive PICO special maintenance, which was $1.5 million. So overall, we're looking at being down $1.1 million less than what we received back in 2007-2008 for capital dollars. But it is, you know, improving every year. So we'll eventually get back to those rates, those amounts that we had back in 2007-8. The next handout, it was an ad that was in the paper. This is the notice of tax for school capital outlay. It was in Friday's paper, like I said, and we're required to advertise how we plan to spend that 1.5 mils for capital outlay purposes. We don't have to spend everything that's listed here. The trim guidelines tell you what categories can be here. You can leave off some categories if you want to. You can add things in here that you don't know whether you're going to use it or not, but if you don't put it in this ad, you can't then turn around and use it for that purpose. The only way that we could actually do that, we would have to run another ad in the paper, have another public hearing if we wanted to add something to this. So we normally put in all the categories to cover our bases, so it won't be an audit finding if we go out and do something that's not listed on this site. And it does cost a lot of money to re-advertise, because these ads that were in Friday's papers were $2,900 and some change. So we don't want to have to do that again, so we go ahead and put in all the categories that they list in this ad that goes before the paper.
But just because the money's budgeted doesn't mean we have to spend it.
Yes,
Okay,
and
that'll
it's
be,
actually not even budgeted in all these categories.
I
It's just,
understand.
yeah. If something comes up, one of the questions that I got in that public records request today, why do you have on there purchasing school buses when you're also paying for a lease purchase of school buses? Well, actually, it's called a master lease purchase. That's 4 years ago when we went out for an RFP to purchase 21 buses, and we were allowed by statute to have a 1-year note that automatically renews for 4 more years, and you're able to pay for it this way. And Sharon really wanted a big influx of buses because the average age of her buses had gotten so old. So each year I put on here maybe the possibility of purchasing some more buses
if
with
you don't,
regular
and
capital
if you don't put it
funds.
on here, you can't
Right,
use it
exactly.
or keep it, I understand.
And every year that I've put those in there, not once have we bought more buses since we had the master
Well,
purchase agreement.
you've done very
She's been asking
well
here recently, you
Keeping
know,
us
but-
afloat, I'm very
Yes.
proud.
So, you see everything that's listed there, and, I think the next handout is capital project millage budget for the way that we plan to spend that 1.5 mils, because that 1.5 mils is should bring in $8.9 million. After we fund the maintenance department, which is allowable under statute, and we have greatly reduced the amount that we're using to fund the maintenance department, and the goal is to eventually get all of that moved into the general fund instead of funding that through the capital. But for now, we've got some money in there to fund the maintenance department. We've got the millage flexibility for property insurance of $707,000. I was questioned about that again today. The entire cost of our property insurance is over $1.9 million. The statute allows a certain portion, and NEFAC and our risk management people give us, each of the NEFAC members districts, what amount that they see is allowable based on workman's comp can't be in there, other things can't be in there. So they break that $1.4 million down and show us what can be used. So $707,000 can be paid from capital, and the statute does allow that. We've got the current year purchase on the master purchase agreement for buses. We've got this year that we're just started in July 1, and 1 more year on that. We're paying the 5th year of the energy retrofit loan. A couple of departments asked for vehicles, maintenance department, media, so that's in there. Not necessarily saying that it'll go all the way through and they'll get approved for that. And I did set aside some funding for the special facility because especially with our property values going up, to get the special facility funding, we have to set aside a mill for 3 years. And we got to, that's quite a bit of money when you only get 1.5 mil. So last year I was able to set aside some. This year I'm setting aside some, and next year I'll set aside some so that we'll have those dollars needed to put forth as our skin in the game to get the special facility funds. The next handout is that budget summary ad that was in the paper, and I spoke about it on the day that we met to advertise. It's just a 1-page compression of the budget. You can get the budget in multiple ways, and the way when it gets all the way down to every function, object, cost center, line item, it's 400 and something pages. And I think you have a copy of that in your mailroom there. I printed it out for Tara last night, so I'm sure she put the book in the mailroom. That's where she usually puts it. And like I mentioned before, anytime any of you need anything, if you want just a department's budget or a school's budget, I'm happy to run those printouts and mail them to you. But like I did before, I'll draw your attention to 2 numbers on the first column, which is the general fund column. you'll see that our July 1st,
This would be Tim.
yes, you'll see that your July 1st, 2022 beginning fund balance in the general fund is $16,877,000, and your estimated June 30th, 2023 fund balance is $8,605,000. I provided you with a handout, the handout number 8, that shows how those two fund balances are broken down. The 2021-2022 ending fund balance of $16 million becomes our July 1st starting fund balance. That's comprised of a reserve for state and local project balances. That's money with strings attached. We can't spend it because when they give us money for categoricals, you can only use it in those categoricals. So that's over $4 million. A reserve for carryover purchase orders in all projects in the general fund in the amount of $681,000. That's money already spoken for as those items have ordered but have not been received and paid for yet. A reserve for inventory, that's the value of the inventory count on hand. It's not a cash item. That's $236,000. We've got our required 3% mandated unreserved fund balance of $2.5 million, and the unreserved cash fund balance of over $9 million. That was an amount that was left unspent or unencumbered after all revenues received for the year and all budgets closed out. And that's the highest that it's ever been in prior years, but it has a lot to do with the ESSER funds that came in, and some things being paid for out of the ESSER grant instead of the general fund. So after we've incorporated this June 30th fund balance into the new year budget and included all new budgeted revenues for the new year and budgeted expenditures for the new year, our proposed ending fund balance is a lot less than our beginning fund balance, as it is every year, because the carryover project balances and the carryover encumbrances that I just spoke about, I've taken those out of there because it's assumed that we will spend out those carryover projects and we will receive and pay for the goods or services that were still encumbered. Those two figures alone reduced our expected ending fund balance by $5.1 million. So we've got the projected June 30th, 2023 fund balance as being $8.6 million. I budgeted, included in that, I budgeted reserve for inventories, reserve for FEFP cuts for the family empowerment scholarships, possible FTE shortfall due to student count, a reserve for possible proration of funds, as well as our 3% required fund balance and a reserve for negotiations that I'll speak about shortly. We have an increased retirement rate this year that cost over $500,000 in the general fund. I've got the exact amount on the handout that I gave all of you at the meeting to advertise. We've got increased utility cost, gas and diesel being the two biggest, but both FPL and Clay Electric both raised their rates. We've got large increase, the increased minimum wage. That was a huge expenditure this year because, it had been, you were going to raise it to $15, $1 a year for the next 5 years. We were currently at 10, and they said you got to implement it $15 an hour right now. So that was a huge cost, and we discussed that at the last meeting. And our flexible budget that we received from the state was not enough to cover all these additional costs. We also provided the automatic levels for our instructional classified people on July 1st per our salary schedules, and we budgeted for the normal board and district initiatives as well as our normal operating costs. The total of the current projected reserves for June 30th is a 9.61 financial condition ratio. However, we'll definitely have to pay out those family empowerment scholarships and the FTE audit reserves, so those reserves will go away during the year. Even if we have a loss of students and a proration of the FEFP revenue that takes away those two reserves, I still expect to have at least a 3.7% financial condition ratio, and that true final number will come after the close of this current fiscal year when budgets roll back into the general pot where not all budgets are spent or revenues are greater than expected, bringing us back to an estimated 7% reserve. As mentioned at that prior meeting, we just recently received our second calculation of FEFP, and they had their first proration of funds in there, and they took away $123,551 from us for the proration because they were short on funds to meet the school budget due to student growth over what they had projected at the state level. So Little Putnam County lost $123,551. Now, as you saw from this fund balance sheet, I had set aside a reserve of $500,000 for the possibility of prorations, and then the very first month, because I received it near the end of July, we lost 25% of the reserve that I had set aside, and there will continue to be prorations. Also on that second calc that they sent us, they said our family empowerment scholarships were $3,342,973. This will also change with the third and fourth calc and has historically risen, and I only set aside $3.7 million. I provided you a handout at that meeting to advertise that showed the huge increase that we've had in those scholarships over the years. In 2018-19, I'll briefly go over it since we've got members of the public here. Our scholarships were $354,870. In 2019-20, they were $744,100. In 2021, they were $1,163,136. In 2021-22, they were $2,720,859. And in 2022-2023, already they are at $3,342,973. This is money that they will remove from our state FEFP funds in the third calculation, and then more as they finalize in the fourth calculation. It's an ever-increasing challenge. It's money that's pulled out of the school district's budget. We have to, budget based on the number of kids they've projected us for. But if those kids then get scholarships and go to a public or a private or a religious school, the money follows the kids. So, like you see the huge increase that it's gone from $350,000 in 18-19 to now over $3.3 million. So it's really hard to know what it's going to be and to budget for that, but we do our best. Another thing that I talked to you about at the meeting to advertise is a reserve that I set aside. It's $872,000 for possible negotiations. This doesn't cover those automatic steps that I talked about for instructional and classified, as they're already built into the salary budget. It does not include the increasing minimum wage to $15 from the past $10 an hour that we implemented July 1st. That cost the general fund $1.6 million and some change. That's already built into the salary budget. What it does include is things that we've just briefly touched on in negotiations. One is being sure that everyone on the classified salary schedule gets at least $1 an hour raise, like those that were already at, say, $14.50 an hour and only got a 50-cent raise to get to the minimum wage of $15, and those already making above $15 an hour, so they didn't receive anything. Because we're going to have a whole line of people, 0 years experience to 15 years experience, making the exact same thing. So, they talked about wanting to see that everybody got at least $1 an hour raise. Again, it's not something that's agreed upon, but I've got it set aside if we go that route. For 12-month people on the classified, that would be a raise of $2,088. For 10-month people, it would be a raise of $1,568. It also includes 2 line item categories because there's such a huge inequity by doing this one fell swoop and them not providing the funds to do it. It makes head custodians make the exact same thing as the custodians they're supervising. So the negotiating team did want to look at them and got a little bit built in there to move the head custodians above to start at $15.50 an hour, going all the way to 15 years, it would be $19 an hour based on years of service. That would help differentiate them from the custodians after that minimum wage increase. And the only other category it included was the pre-K associates, because they're actually in a classroom teaching the pre-K students, so they wanted to differentiate them from paraprofessionals that are in a classroom with another teacher in there. So they would be going from starting out at $10.68 an hour, where they were automatically going to 15. Now they would go to 17 an hour based on years of experience. And of course, you all know that we get the TSIA categorical FEFP, where we're allowed to give classroom teachers. We're trying to get to the $47,500. We're still not there yet, but every year they give us enough to raise those teachers level 0 to 8 as much as we can, but only give a smaller portion for veteran teachers. So we talked about for this year, maybe the veteran teachers and the non-classroom teachers could get the same raise that the beginning teachers were. And if we do that, that was going to be a cost to the district, which is included in this $872,000 total, and it would be a cost of $1,500. All teachers would get $1,507 increase if we go that. This is, of course, things that were just discussed in negotiations. We haven't had a meeting in a long time. When Mark decides to have another meeting, we'll continue on with the discussion. Eventually, the two negotiating teams will agree upon some type of a plan and come before you all, and you will be the ones that voted for it. But I just felt like, since these were things that the union side felt very strongly on, that I was going to do a set aside to cover at least what's been discussed thus far. At that meeting to advertise, I also talked about how our increase of $5 million in our budget, that everyone talks so highly about how some went to state categoricals, they're not flexible, so that brought the increase down to about $3 million. I passed out a handout that you all got that showed how, once everything was said and done with the increased retirement rate, the $15 an hour minimum wage, the increased utilities and things like that, how we went from getting $5 million more in our budget from the state to being in the hole over $1.4 million. So, it didn't end up, and the union understands that. They've seen the printouts, they've looked at the categoricals and everything, so they know it's not as pretty a picture as the state put out there and everything. Handout number 9 is just my general fund budget. It's just you seeing it in another way. This is the way I always start budgeting each year. It shows you the estimated revenues for the year, the transfers in from the capital budget for funding our maintenance department and property insurance flexibility, and our carryover reserves. And you'll see at the very back of the last page, it matches exactly to the amount that's in the paper. That's just another way of doing the budget, and this is how I start early on in the year, getting everything down that I know of. It shows the budgeted expenditures by category, salary and benefits, state categoricals, charter school payments, et cetera, as well as a breakdown in the right-hand corner of each of those categories of what percentage of recurring revenues that expenditure is. And like I mentioned earlier, Tara should have placed the complete budget in your mailroom. That's a 200 or 300 page document that shows all the different funds and all the different categories money is put into. Your next handout is actually number 10 and number 11, and every one of these handouts are not required for the budget or anything like that. It's just informational and things that I'm giving you and talking about. The analysis of our base student allocation, it went up $214.49 over last year. Those are the ones that the base student allocation is the flexible state funds, and that's the largest BSA increase in many years. The analysis of our FTE, which is page 11, you can see that our FTE that we're currently being funded at is projected at an increase of 115 students over last year. I do not have a lot of confidence in that number because we've been in declining enrollment for, as you'll see, many years, long time. I would love to see that happen. I'd love to see the students come, but we've been in, like I said, declining enrollment for too long for me to rely on those dollars coming in. So if we hit that number, it would still, if those students do come, we would still be over 2,500 fewer students than we had in our high of 1996-97. That was the school. I started January of 96, and we had 12,883 students. That's the highest we'd ever been. And now they're projecting us at 10,362, but we only had 10,246 last year. I've set aside, one of those reserves that I set aside was $500,000 for an FTE shortfall for this year in case the students do not come. When we got all of those cuts last year, it took up all the set-asides I had done, plus quite a bit more that I didn't have set aside because of the huge increase in the family empowerment scholarships. Handout number 12 is your, just shows the history of the fund balance since 2010-11 and the comparison of how it compares to the Florida school district average up until the last year that it's posted by the AG office. We had been in steady decline as far as our fund balance goes for several years, as had the state average. And one of the major causes of this was spending more than recurring revenue because we were being funded at around the 2007-8 levels. That's the year that the bottom fell out and they took funds away in the middle of the year, and it took probably 14 years to get back up to that level. And, 12 years to get back up to that level. So we're just getting ahead of the 2007-8 levels. But our expenditures, of course, had the effects of inflation added in. So we're really truly not back there yet. We have mandates that are not fully funded or programs that are no longer self-sufficient, but we worked together and cut our budgets, and we reversed that trend. In 2019, which is the last year that the Florida School District average was posted on the AG website, we were 2.4% below the state average, but that's the year that we gave across-the-board raises. We hadn't given any raises in several years, and that's the year that you all approved a package that gave all teachers, all classified, and all support people a raise. So we went down a little bit that year. You'll see we went from an 8.98% financial condition ratio to 7.24% that year. But we've been building back up since then. You'll see our current year-end financial condition ratio is well, a good bit larger, but it has the effects of receiving the federal ESSER funds within that as well. And as well as we had several unfilled vacancies throughout the year. And of course, that money from those unfilled allocations rolled back to fund balance when we couldn't find the people to hire. So really, I've presented a lot of informational knowledge today, as well as presenting the budget to you. Today's meeting is to approve the tentative budget and millage rates that were advertised in Friday's paper. If you approve, I'll open up the system for schools and departments to begin putting on purchase orders and spending their budgets, getting ready for school to start. Since July 1st, they've only had the ability to put on emergency purchase orders, but once the tentative budget, you will, of course, approve a budget tonight. You can make changes to the budget that's put before you, so whatever you approve tonight, I will then have that in the system, and we'll go ahead and open it up for schools to start spending their money. But before we go to the roll call vote, I want to see if there's any questions from me, from the board members, the superintendent, or any public that's here on any of the information I provided for you today or on the budget.
Rhonda, it looks like you get punished for holding money back and trying to save. If your state gets in a tight, they're gonna look at your budget and take your money away.
They do.
I know they do,
That's-
and we've seen it, and it's, I don't know, property values, so many people coming to Florida have increased dramatically, and when you get a rollback rate, yeah, that's nice, you're rolling back, but still, you're gonna wind up
Yep.
with more than they paid the year before
yeah.
due to that. So
And that's why I went through that spiel at the beginning, because that is one of the first things we're required to do in these budget hearings is to discuss the rollback rate and what it entails. And I mentioned to you that I got the public records request at 4:04 today. I think the person that sent it to our public records officer at 12 p.m. yesterday, but she just sent it while we were sitting here in the board meeting, and then, of course, I had the budget hearing, but I did respond very quickly to it. And so I don't know if you've read your response yet, but I've responded to it before I came back in here to the 5 o'clock. But I'm here now if you want to ask any specific questions, or if anybody else does too, or any of you do. So I'll be happy to answer whatever I can, and I'll look back over that email to see. I did it quickly because it was from one meeting to the next, and I knew you'd probably come and you had wanted the information quickly, but again, I didn't get it. You'll see from my response what time I got it in at. So I did as quickly as I could.
with your prior years of being the president of the Florida Finance Directors Association, I have the utmost confidence
Appreciate
in what
that.
you bring us,
Agree.
and I just can't say enough about that. I mean, I have my own personal feelings about what the games that play, and they come, it just seems like it's always something, whether it's students that, you have to set aside money for kids that won't be here, and then if you do that, the state will wind up taking that back at some point. But anyway, it's neither here nor there.
Well, it
Anybody
just-
else got a question?
It never ceases to amaze me from year to year, the amount of work that is involved in doing this budget
Recognize
and
that.
getting it right down to the last penny, which
I
you have
appreciate
always
that.
done.
Yes, ma'am. I do
And
my best.
I cannot thank you enough for the services you give
Mm-hmm.
us.
Madam Chair, we do have a request for public comment. I believe that's
Okay.
from Mr. Ho. And regarding
School consolidation.
consolidation taxes, so,
Taxes.
and we talked to our board attorney, and since it's taxes, it is related to our budget, so as you see fit.
Okay. Mr. Hoteling, would you like to come up?
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yeah, if you come up to the mic, Mr. Ho.
If you would just state your name and your address.
Pardon me. Tim Hoteling, 105 Riverside Way, San Mateo. First, I'd like to say that I'm really disappointed that after having watched the candidate forums for those that want to take your place, that there's none of those candidates decide to come in here and participate, because each time I've been here, it's been educational, and I think they're really missing out in a sober pill, you know. And along that same route, I don't know what the law is, but, you know, what you printed was in Friday afternoon, and here it is Monday afternoon, because it isn't a morning newspaper anymore, which means it,
Tuesday
you know,
This is Tuesday.
This is Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
This is Tuesday today. not Monday.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we
one
are-
more day.
follow
In
the
any
law.
event.
Yeah, we are required to follow the Florida Truth in Millage.
That's okay. I'm just
Okay.
explaining. You
Okay.
you can even do better than what the requirements are,
Yeah,
and
but we're told
Lord,
by
you know,
the-
perhaps some people have schedules and they'd
We
like
do,
to
and
to
we
get
follow
there.
it.
So
They
that's
even tell you what time to hold the hearing.
hey. I'm just telling
I
you
know
that
it.
that I've got a little bit of time, and I'm still hustling, because I actually tried to do some research and learn all about the cohort rates and all of that good stuff, and how graduation rates are different. But I think the main thing is that you're doing yourself an injustice by not putting out a little more information to the public. For example, on the stuff you did publish, you've got school buses that you're buying and school buses that you're leasing. It's what you published.
She can explain it.
Yes.
I'm just
But you know, you could have been at
I'm-
that meeting as well, the first meeting.
Well,
Ms.
where she
Crawford,
explained she
may
explained all of it.
May I?
You are.
Okay, thank you. I'm just explaining that I'm probably not the only one that takes a look and says, oh, this is phooey. Okay? And I know that it's not phooey, because I've been here a couple years. She's magnificent. But my wife's also had some experience in that sort of stuff, and her impression was it's phooey. So you can take it as you like it. I'm just providing my insight. And especially when it comes to your grand plan to get rid of all the old schools and bring in a new schools, because there's a lot of things, like, as I understand, one of the main rationales is you're losing students, yet you've graduated 100 more students this year than you did nine years ago. And 2 plus 2 just doesn't fully add up to 4, although I know from, you know, the body language that I see up here, I can believe that, you know, y'all are, it's not pleasant, but the bottom line is the information that gets out that I read when I go to the state's sites, the School Board of Education, and how y'all got a 70% graduation rate, not a 92.5% graduation rate. And your numbers of students graduated are 100 more, but you say the reason you're having to consolidate is because you have fewer students. And I'm sure there's all entirely good rationale behind it. But if you want to pass this bond, I think you'd do better to put put the story out to the public a little better than what you've done, because the only thing that I've seen, other than when Dr. Cerency started off with, this is the school we're going to get rid of, and this is a school we're not going to get rid of, and everybody said, well, how come I never heard about it before? And the complaints of public transparency is I get this full page, we're raising your taxes. My barber tells me how the number of customers he's got says, I see that translations, you're going to stick it in my back. And it has nothing to do with it that there's going to be value added. And that's my only message, is your message, if there is one, isn't getting out.
Tim, I appreciate it. Hey, it is, unless you are as trained as she is, this stuff is about as clear as the St. Johns River on most days. And
Right.
it's very hard to work through, but it's in government, nothing is ever as it seems. And I tell you, you know, we deal with the state, they give you money, they tell you to hold it, then they take it back at some point. And it's she has to monitor the shell games and then try to anticipate what 25% of what budget they're gonna want back at some point. And it's,
I understand that.
it's
From-
miserable, but you're right.
From the citizen's perspective that's having to pay the freight, why the heck do you have roofs leaking? Why can't you fix them? And this is just a generic example.
I understand.
You know, and if in fact you've got a maintenance issue from a 50-year-old, I mean, in Europe, they've got 400-year-old buildings that are serving quite well. And just carte blanche say, well, they're all old, so we need new, to me doesn't tell the story. And y'all might have a real challenge getting that bond issue passed, and if in fact that happens, it might become really challenging.
Yeah.
Mr. Ho, one thing that's glaring to me is on our budget is we're spending $2.5 million on maintenance and $2.3 million only into our classroom. When maintenance is more than the classroom, there's a problem. Our children are that important that we would spend this money for a safe school, because we've come to this position before in 1967, 68. Three of us have lived this already, and our students deserve.
Amen. And for that, my rebuttal from response, pardon me, is, do you all have an inspector general?
Yes.
Sure.
Why don't you put him on a dadgum maintenance crew, and so that you can talk about all of the nepotism and the lack of certifications that you have, and the hanky-panky that goes on with the permits, that you only have one guy that gives away permits for 14 districts or some dadgum thing, and when a citizen brings a concern to that person, he doesn't want to get involved. And if you had an inspector general that could inspect, I think you'd probably find a way that those maintenance costs would be less. But you started that part of it.
Well, it's just the number that I see. That to me is,
I'm
and when it goes out of the classroom, that has a problem for me.
yes, sir. Well, I'm just saying these are the things that I've heard over the years, and I didn't.
Well,
I just wanted to, I don't know if you were here when Rhonda explained the capital outlay that was
No, ma'am,
advertised. I mean, you might have missed her explanation for that.
And-
But anything on this list, if we wanted to, but we have to put this on the list.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean we're going to buy new buses, but if we had to,
Okay.
it had to be on this list.
That.
it's required by law.
Yeah, the county has some of those. I fight with them when they make everything a district so that they can tax you whenever you want every year, and it's, yeah, I understand some of this, but problem is, Joe Blow citizen, that the only information they get from you. Let me ask you this: these cost a few dollars.
2,900.
$2,900.
Could you not have had something else in words?
No, that's, I had to send all those to the state, they had to approve them, they had me change
Yeah,
two
but-
words on it.
But you've got young ladies from the local newspaper would be more than happy to write a story that explains it a little bit more. But anyhow, that's,
Some ads, and they have to be exactly as they tell us.
no, I'm not talking about altering it. I'm talking in addition.
Tim, you're right.
Addition.
Government is never clear enough for people to understand. It's hard enough for us to have an expert stand here and tell us.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll try to do a better job. I mean,
just-
just keep
you're-
coming back and let us know.
Your story is not getting out, and it might not be pleasant. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have another public comment from Elaine Jackson
Yes, this is the lady. that
on
spoke to that.
budgeting and losing money from the state.
Okay, this is my first time. So, Elaine Jackson, 148 Cinnamon Drive, Interlochen. Okay.
Take your time, buddy.
Hey, this is no big deal. You go on, friends. It's good.
I just thank you guys for everything. I feel like there's such a lack of education in our community that people don't know what you're doing. To come and hear how the state's pulling money is sad.
It is.
It is.
On a local level, we get mad at you guys, but when we don't understand, it makes you sick, and I wish that parents would come out and learn and understand so we can make a difference, because the kids are suffering.
Yes.
We talked a lot about you guys are going to try to change the meeting times, pushing it back to 4:30, which I think hopefully will help. Me personally, I wasn't able to come for years because of my job, and now I'm able to. So hopefully more parents will come out. Hopefully they'll at least tune in or watch the recordings. We talked a lot about we're losing money from the state. Why? Can someone explain why, or why does that happen, that they decide to pull funds from us? Like, I understand, like, enrollment drops, so we get funds pulled, but why else? It's just their budget, they lose money, so we get
Or they put it in
affected.
other places.
If they have a shortfall, and Rhonda would be more appropriate to address that, but if they have a shortfall, we've got their money that they distributed to public schools. And if there becomes a time that money is needed back to cover their expenses, then they can take it back. But Rhonda would be able to explain that in a better fashion.
Rhonda, can you
Another example.
address
Can
that
you address
generally?
that?
Would be like
I
the,
think I spoke about it briefly, but when the legislature meets, they come up with an overall budget for the state.
Mhm.
And they do it based on what they believe is the projected FTE when we're talking about the school district portion of it.
What do you mean FTE? What is that?
Full-time equivalency.
What the funding per student.
Each student.
Okay,
You
okay.
get funded based on the number of students that you have. So
Okay.
they're projecting how many students they expect in the state of Florida and all public schools. That's when they build their entire budget.
Okay.
If they projected low and more students come, then they haven't put aside enough money for school education.
Okay.
That's when they do a proration to the appropriation that they did. The appropriation is the entire budget that they set aside. Now they don't have enough because Florida is growing in leaps and bounds.
Right.
And they didn't set aside enough for the incoming students because they projected lower than they should. And it could go the other way.
Right.
Occasionally, there might be extra funds, and throughout the year, I've never really seen a positive appropriation, proration giving us more, but they don't take away if they have enough funds there, and, the balance would roll into their fund balance. But when they don't have enough money to meet all the needs of all the school districts, then they prorate it across, like, we only have 10,000 students. Another school district would have 200,000 students. And so we get prorated on the number of students we have. Our portion of the reduction that they just gave us at the end of July was 125,000, as I talked about. Another school district was probably cut $1 million.
Right.
We're a small district. They consider us medium, but we're really a small district, so.
Is there a way to fight that at a local level? Is there a way we as a community? So how do we raise more money for our schools?
But if you raise more money for your schools, it would be you would be working toward our county doing something to raise money. But as far as the state goes, talking to the legislatures, going to meetings, telling them we need more money, telling whoever's in, the House there and everything, talking to the educational committee.
Elaine, our school district, all school districts are part of or are controlled by the legislature in Tallahassee. So we're actually subservient, or we answer to the legislature. So we can't really fight that. The legislature has authority over the school district. So to answer your question, we can't fight it as far as the money that comes from the legislature. And that's why when we do, the way we get the money from the legislature is we were required through our required local effort, our property taxes, we have to levy a certain minimum amount. And by doing that, then we're entitled from the tax money given to us from the state.
When you say levy, break it down. Speak English.
Thank you. And I know sometimes we use a lot of jargon.
Yeah.
When we levy, that means that we require property owners to pay taxes to the local government.
Okay.
So that's a levy. The
Okay.
governments levy a tax.
On
so
your
that-
property for such a,
Right.
And
okay.
they
So
tell
that's
you
how we
much
get
your
money.
property's worth.
I mean, I know it's not a popular thing for people, but why wouldn't we raise the millage rate so our schools could be better funded?
And that's a great question. And that's something that our taxpayers have to approve. And that's exactly the process we're going through now. And again, Rhonda can address that, but it's not always a popular thing to raise property taxes because property owners have to pay that tax, whereas people that don't own property don't have to pay that.
Right. I mean, I agree. I own property, and
Right.
it's not fun to write a check, but I guess I'm just
Think
our
about what's
schools
best for
are so important. Or can we go against the county and get more money from the county, or how?
Well, and again, we work, the county also levies money. For
Right,
their
right,
budget,
right.
And we levy.
So we're
money
separate from them. We don't.
separate from them.
Okay.
Correct. Right. So, I mean, you're asking some great questions. I mean, questions that a lot of times we take for granted, but these are things that our taxpayers need to know.
Right. And I guess trying to get more involvement, which I don't know how we do that.
Well, here's one thing I would recommend, and I think you're starting off the right way, and I would recommend this for Mr. Ho as well, is feel free to come in and meet with us, meet with Rhonda and her staff, and again, we can break it down into understandable terms. I mean, a lot of the terms that Rhonda uses kind of blows me away too,
Yeah.
the accounting terms and all that, but I think it's good as a taxpayer and a citizen. We want you to, I appreciate you guys being here, I really do, and I think it's important that all of our taxpayers ask us questions to keep us accountable and make sure that we're providing information. So if you want to schedule a time with Susan, my
Okay.
assistant, and Tim, same thing, schedule a time. We'll be more than glad to sit down with you and just have a conversation.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Sure,
okay.
absolutely.
When you guys get the money that's levied for the school and then it's budgeted out, where do the individual schools get the money from? Is that in the budget, and is that per enrollment? Like Interlochen would get a different amount than Palaca than Crescent City, or?
Or the students per student per FTE
Okay.
is what they call it.
Okay, so
If you're a bigger school, you get more money proportionally to the number of.
because you have more students.
By
Okay.
student allocation.
But I always have to give it out to meet comparability. If we do not meet comparability, which
What does
means
that
I'm
mean when you mean
treating-
comparability?
I'm treating every school exactly the same. There's got to
Okay.
be formulas in place. If I don't treat them equally, then we lose federal funds. So I have to do a comparability report submitted to the state every year to show our allocation formulas and tell how many how many teachers, how many parapros, how many other categories that each school earns based on their number of full-time students. I have to show the ratio. Everything has to be the same. If we don't meet comparability, then they take away the Title I fund.
We're a Title I school district.
What does that mean?
Which means we have a high percentage of children living below the poverty line.
Right.
So
We should get more money.
we get money from the federal government. And the money, Rhonda could tell you more than I can, but having been through this, you wind up, that's why we feed breakfast, we feed
Right.
lunch, and
Those are federal
some of the
programs.
things that we
Okay.
do, we're able to do. And, but then the grading that comes from the state is designed for one reason, and that's to declare failing schools or schools that don't perform at an A level or B
Right.
level, so they can give options to parents to vacate the public schools. And
But if we
that's
don't
not-
have
well, I'm
enough
not
money
saying
to
that's a
teach our
bad thing.
kids, our schools are going to stay failing.
But what I'm saying
Right,
is,
right, right.
that's, you know, we wound up, I was pretty pleased to see that overall we had a C district, considering and none in turnaround and some of the things that are done.
Mm-hmm.
We've got kids that are very challenged, and we're not the only district. There
Right,
are
right,
others
right.
as well, but we're faced with a lot of unique problems here that
Mm-hmm.
time may change. We're getting the growth that's going to come from the overburdening St. Johns County, and with the new interstate coming up here out of Clay County, it's changing. But it's still, you know, we've got a lot of homeless kids and.
Yes, we do.
you know,
Mhm. Can schools raise their own money? Individual schools?
Well, sometimes they have fundraisers that they keep locally, you know, things.
And that goes directly to each individual school for whatever they
They raise
deem.
their own funds through fundraisers. Right, they have their own internal accounts to do that, but the money for teachers and other things and facilities, that comes from the district, and we hand that out to each school, or we appropriate that to each school based
Okay.
on those, the number of students.
Okay.
I would like to say something briefly. I appreciate both of you coming and talking. It's very discouraging to put all the time and effort into building a budget and having hearings, and year after year after year, no one comes.
No one shows
The
up.
public does not care.
Right.
This
You
is
know,
the first time in 8 years I've seen somebody here.
Yeah.
And it does take a lot of work and effort to build a budget and get it
Right.
all balanced and everything based on all the constraints they give us. You put a lot of man hours into it, not touting my own horn because it's my
Right.
job, it's what I'm supposed to do. But it's disheartening when nobody cares.
Right.
So I appreciate you both being here and
Yeah.
asking questions.
Well, and I think a lot of us care. I just think people get so caught up in their own life and their jobs and their family, and then it's easy, because I was one of these people, to stay at home, and you get home, you have dinner, you have your kids, and then you get pissed off when you get your tax bill, and you're like, well, if I'm paying this amount to the school board, why is my kid not getting this level of education that I feel that they deserve? But then when you come and you get educated, you see that it doesn't just stop here, it
Right.
goes on. So hopefully we can get more
You've
involvement.
asked some real good questions, both of you
Please
have.
invite
yeah.
your friends.
I have, trust me, I have.
Yeah.
We'll have one more hearing on the budget. and that's
Okay.
in September, at the next board meeting, actually. It's right after the board meeting again, like it is this time.
Sure.
So I've started asking for parents to let me know their concerns, and so I would just fill that out and turn it in, and then be able to address, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And again, both of you reach out to Susan, and she can,
And I just call, email,
yeah.
Okay.
If you want to stop by, Susan can give you the number.
okay.
'Cause
Same thing, Tim, if you want to set up a time, we'll be glad to meet
The
with you.
worst thing is misinformation and people talking and not knowing.
Knowing, yes.
You know,
And it's
we- do
election
we
time,
always
so there's
knock
a
the ball
lot
over the
of that.
fence? We don't always hit a home run, but,
Right.
you know, the law says we're to act in place of the parent and loco parentis. And
Well, and if parents don't shut up, you don't know what we want, so.
I understand, so we need to hear.
Right.
Right.
I understand. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Elaine.
Jackson.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming.
And you said I knew you from Plaquemine High. What year did you graduate? Oh, no, just the year you graduated. You don't have to say it out loud. Yeah, okay, I was there.
That wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
Nobody else heard that.
I was still there then.
Okay, so now we're moving to adoption of tentative millage rates for the 2022-2023 school year. So are these every
Roll call.
motion?
Yeah, on that.
So we're doing individually each thing?
Yes.
That's another requirement that we
Okay.
have to go by,
Because okay.
calling out each millage rate.
Does everybody have that? A copy of that, audience? You have those? Okay.
Rick, hold it up,
Are
It's
they-
the
Page,
that's
Are
it,
they voting on?
agenda.
agenda.
the agenda.
the agenda?
We're gonna go through.
It's on the
E,
agenda.
C and D.
Yeah. Does everybody have one? If not, well, Susan. Right.
It was.
I don't have it.
With our regular agenda. Look under your emergency item.
Well, I've gotten all of Sandy's material here.
It's the agenda. It was the first part. There it is. You got your hand on it, I think.
Underneath,
Underneath, David.
at the bottom,
Right there.
it's stapled. Oops.
I've got all of Sandy's stuff and my stuff. Okay. Okey-doke.
Okay, so we need to have motions on each item. Oh, just,
We're just gonna do the roll call vote.
okay,
And
Have to actually do a motion, a second, and then a roll call
Yes.
vote, if I recall.
are we gonna start with
C1.
C1? Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve or adopt. Is that the correct language?
Approved.
We approve C1 tentative required local effort millage rate of 3.215 mils.
I second that.
We have a motion by Mr. David Buckles and a second by Ms. Jane Crawford. All those in favor, say
I
aye.
think we're doing a roll
Oh,
call.
Oh, we're doing,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
and District 3 is absent, Ms. Gilliard, and District 4,
Approve.
District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. We'll move to item number 2.
I make a motion that we approve the tentative discretionary millage rate of 0.748 mils.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Jane Crawford and a second by Mr. Bud McGinnis.
District 1, what is your vote?
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
and District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
District 5.
Approve.
Madam Chair, I make a motion we adopt the tentative capital outlay millage rate of 1.500 mils.
Second it.
We have a motion by Mr. David Buckles and a second by Mr. Bud McGinnis.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
and District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve item C4, tentative total millage rate of 5.463, which is 9.32% above the rollback rate.
I second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Bud McGinnis and a second by Ms. Jane Crawford.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is not here, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. We'll move to portion D.
Madam Chair, I make a motion under portion D that we adopt the tentative general fund budget of $107,160,551.77.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. David Buckles and a second by Ms. Jane Crawford.
And District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 2.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve D2, tentative debt service funds balance budget of $107,019.13.
I'll second that.
A motion by Mr. Bud McGinnis, a second by Ms. Jane Crawford.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is not here, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 3.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the tentative capital projects fund budget of $17,553,760.70.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Ms. Jane Crawford, a second by Mr. David Buckles.
And District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. We'll move to item 4.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve D4, tentative special revenue funds budget of $73,610,665.05.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Bud McGinnis and a second by Mr. David Buckles.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
and District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 5.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve D5 tentative internal service funds budget of $32,592,722.13.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Mr. Bud McGinnis and a second by Mr. David Buckles.
And District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is absent, and District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 6,
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the tentative permanent funds budget of $131,882.90.
Second.
a motion by Ms. Jane Crawford and a second by Mr. Bud McGinnis.
And District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is not here, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the tentative enterprise funds budget of $12,882,457.71.
I'll second that.
A motion by Mr. David Buckles, a second by Ms. Jane Crawford.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve. I'm sorry.
District 3 is not here, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0. Item 8,
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve item D8, total district tentative budget in its entirety of $244,039,059.39.
I'll second that.
we have a motion by Mr. Bud McGinnis and a second by Ms. Jane Crawford.
District 1,
Approve.
District 2,
Approve.
District 3 is absent, District 4,
Approve.
and District 5.
Approve.
Motion carries 4-0.
$244 million.
Item E, do we vote on
I
advertising?
think we roll call to advertise, don't we?
This is.
Madam
says-
Chairman, I make a motion that we advise the property appraiser.
That Tuesday, September 6th at 5:05 PM.
Yes.
We have a meeting in the boardroom.
Okay.
And at that meeting, a public hearing will be held to consider the final millage rate and the final budget.
I'll
That one.
second that,
They
all of that
will-
motion.
They will let us know for sure.
That one.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr.
You want me to
David
read, you want me to read the
Buckles.
whole thing in its entirety? Would you feel better if I read the whole thing? Okay, I made a motion to advise the property appraiser that Tuesday, September 6th, at 5:05 PM in the school board meeting room, 200 Reed Street, Palatka, Florida, a public hearing will be held to consider the final millage rate and the final budget.
And I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. David Buckles and a second by Ms. Jane Crawford. Is this a roll call vote?
Should be. I
Okay.
would think.
Yeah.
As well.
Can't go wrong
District
with that.
1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3 is absent, and District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes, advertise.
Motion carries 4-0.
Whew.
This meeting is adjourned.